Good evening, Top Badminton. Tonight I am joined by the one and the only Gordon Haldane. How are you tonight?
I'm fine, Martin. Thanks very much. And how are you?
I'm really good. We've got sunshine in Scotland, so you can't get any better than that, right? One
Yeah,
second,
well,
my
I'm
camera.
glad it's sunny where you are because it's not sunny.
Is
It's
it
not
not?
sunny where I am.
It's beaming here. It's really nice. It's been quite nice. It's warm. The heat's in the sun. Have you had any sun at all?
Yeah, well, we've not over the weekend. Well, no, we have had a bit of sun, but it's been really windy over the weekend.
Yeah. Just
And it's
today, I thought it was particularly hot. But when you got into the sun, it just felt. I took the dog out this morning. It was really windy, and I thought, God, it looks horrible out there. And you just stepped out, and the sun hit you, and it was, oh my God, it's really the heat in that sun's incredible.
aye.
Nice.
No, we've. I mean, it's been warm here. It's been mild here today, but we've been out walking with my wife,
Nice.
and it is warm.
And
but no sun,
do you work?
unfortunately.
Where do you work about? Where do you live?
So I stay in a place called Kirkcaldy in Fife, and I work in a place called Glenrothes in Fife, it's about a 15-minute drive. It's about 8 miles or so.
It's not bad.
So it's
not,
not.
Is it? And have you always been there, Gordon?
Yeah. So
are you from Kirkcaldy originally, or what?
No, I was born in Dunfermline, which is 12 miles along the road. So that's still another Fife town as well.
Still Fife, Gordon.
Still a Fife. Although, in saying that, I went to, I spent a bit of time in Edinburgh. I went to university in Edinburgh.
Isn't that the dark side? If you're from Fife, isn't that going over the river the dark side?
Well, it is a little bit. The weather's always worse across there.
It's true. But I lived in Aberdeen. I used to love going to the beach at night. And even when I came back to Peebles, I know you know it's surrounded by hills. And it's quite a dark place. It's just quite. I mean, it's nice. Everybody comes to Peebles and say, "Oh, I love Peebles. It's really nice." But when you look out, there's hills. If I showed you a video, if I showed you my camera, there's hills all around. So you really are in the dark. And when we moved to Aberdeen, we're like, "Oh my God, how light!" The light difference and the different light makes your mood, I think, is incredible.
Aye.
So do you go to the beach and stuff? Do you take advantage of that, or do you do much in the sea?
Yeah, well, we do. My wife does a lot of open water swimming.
Oh, nice! I did that. I love that.
Yeah.
Really?
So Lynn started. My wife's a big swimmer. My wife was a representative swimmer.
Sure.
So she was a really good swimmer. So she was down at the pool maybe 3 or 4 times a week. But obviously now with it being shut, she started swimming in the sea, open water swimming.
When does she? I do that. I swim normally about 3 days a week. I swim before work. Normally about like 7 o'clock. I would go down to Peebles, but like you say, it's killing me the pool being shut. Do you know? Swimming is one of them. I mean, I don't know if you swim yourself, but it's totally solitary. It's like literally if you think about running, you bump into people, you've got to nod and give kind of courtesy. If you cycle, you see people. If you play golf, you see people. But swimming, your head's under the water, and you're on your own. I mean, I go there for an hour, and my head's under the water, and I can't hear a thing. And I've seen me swimming up and down for an hour, 100 lengths in the pool, and I get out. And the guy I've been swimming alongside, and he's overtaken me, and I've overtaken him. Is like nice to neighbour. I've been nice. He's overtaken me. I was like, "Oh God, it's you!" He's like, "Oh."
He's putting your bins out for you.
It's unbelievable. No, but does she swim with the sea? Does she swim a distance?
Yeah, so there's a kind of little kind of clubs. My wife's a teacher, so there's a few teachers that do that, and a couple of Lynn's friends.
Open water swimming club, nice.
Yeah. So just in a place called Kinghorn, which is about a village just along from Kirkcaldy on the coast. It's about 5 miles away.
It's not far from Aberdeen, is it?
No, it's not. So the kind of Kinghorn, Burntile, and Aberdour are within maybe 2 or 3 miles of each other along the Fife coast.
Have you ever tried
it? Lynn's been desperate for me to go in. She's been trying to persuade me to go in, but I do a bit of mountain biking and I play a little bit of tennis now as well. So that tends to happen in the morning when Lynn is going swimming, thankfully.
I was going to say, that's your excuse and you're sticking to it. Yeah, you're constantly making yourself plans to go and do things whenever she goes swim. No, I love that. I love does she swim? Is it a wetsuit?
Yeah, so it's a wetsuit and she's got all the gear, the wee orange floaty thing and all this kind
so
of
she
stuff.
got one of those really posy coats.
The I can't remember what they call the dry coat or something like that. Something like that.
Ridiculous. And
Yeah.
you know
So she's got.
when the pool was open there in Peebles, there's a woman that's an open water swimmer, and you know how you can't use your changing rooms in the pool just now, they're very briefly, and you've literally only got an hour. Which I don't know if she did. What's it called? Lynn, did you say? What's her name?
Yeah,
Lynn.
Lynn,
So whenever when you go, you very specifically, I don't know where you are, but I only had an hour. There was 8 till 9, and 1 minute past 9 you're out of there because they're doing a deep clean between 9 and 9:15. So the next group's coming in at 15. They've got 15 minutes to wipe down, so you could barely get in the changing room. And all the swimmers would come with those coats on, in their bikinis underneath them. You go in the changing room and it was off and they're I need to get one, but they look really expensive.
Oh well, I've not. I think my kids ended up buying Lynn one for our Christmas.
Yeah, nice.
So how much they cost, but a lot of the swimmers have them. I can tell you that.
Really. Right, let's get on with the questions. So let's start with your obvious question. Your full name?
Gordon Haldane.
Gordon Haldane. And your age?
50.
50, same age as me.
Yeah, well, I was 50 June last year.
Oh yeah, you're 6 months on me. I was December 6. Yeah, nice.
You look a lot younger than me as well, Martin.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel very, very old. I have to tell you. It's funny, isn't it, turning 50? I don't know about you. I find it quite. Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're unbeknownst to yourself, you kind of crab it in your late 40s because you know 50's coming, and then there's a certain peace that happens when you turn 50. You think to yourself, I'm kind of there now, aren't I? You feel like, oh well, that was an anticlimax kind of. I don't know about you, but that's how I felt. Growing up to the 2 years prior, I remember thinking, I had a real hankering for doing different things, and I've never done this, and I've never done that, and I've never done this. And God, my life, is that it? Is that it? 48, look what I've achieved, nothing. And then you get to 50 and you go, well, I suppose. Good. Are you home area? Home area, Gordon? Where are you from originally? Where were you born?
I'm from Dunfermline originally, and stay in Kirkcaldy.
And so tell me about brothers and sisters. So it's the next question.
Oh, I've got one sister.
Yeah. And did she play badminton?
Jill played. Yes, Jill was a very good badminton player. So Gillian Haldane. It's now Gillian Rogers. Is her married name. So Jill was a very, very good player. So she also played international badminton, Commonwealth Games, World Championships, Europeans, all that kind of good stuff.
Wow. And what age was she compared to you? Was she older? Or?
So Jill was about a year and a half younger than I was. Yeah.
So, and were you two very competitive with one another?
Yes. So I think because we both played badminton as well, we were both competitive in a different way. A little bit more kind of aggressive than Jill is. Jill's a little bit more kind of laid back, but still very competitive. So she shows her competitive side in a bit of a different way than I might do. We also played mixed doubles together as well.
Did you really for a long time?
Yeah. So we played off and on as juniors together, and then played quite a bit at senior badminton together as well.
We'll come to that. And so, were you into singles when you first started? Were you into singles or doubles, or what were you? And also, sorry, I'll come back to the oldies. Sorry, I'm terrible for going ahead with myself.
Oh, you're fine.
So you have one sister, and she's 2 years younger than you. Is that right, Jill?
Yeah, roughly.
Is it Gillian or Jill?
It's Gillian with a Gillian with a J.
Gillian with a J. And what age were you when you very, very first played, Gordon?
Must have been about maybe 5 or 6. So my family were a badminton playing family.
Really?
Yeah. So they'd done Dunfermline badminton leagues.
Yeah.
At the time, way back. So that would be kind of mid to late 70s, were enormous. There was a lot of people played. Saturday nights was the mixed doubles leagues. Lots of clubs. So because my mum played, my dad played, my granddad was a coach, my aunt played.
So your granddad, is that your mum's dad?
Yes, my mum's dad. Yes, so they all played. My granddad coached, so I would get hauled along, my sister and I guess.
How good is that?
To some of the league matches and stuff. So you just kind of started playing.
Did they coach you, Gordon?
Yeah, so in the very early stages, up until I was about 16, my grandfather coached both myself and my sister, and also my two cousins as well. So my mum's sister, so my mum was a county player. My aunt, my mum's sister, was a junior internationalist. And both my cousins, my aunt's children, both played as well. So my cousin Ross was a junior internationalist, as was my cousin Lindsay as well. So so
is this all come from your grand? What was your granddad's name?
Jim Elder was my grandfather's name. So that all kind of came from Jim. So that my granddad and a few other people did a lot of thing in the area, the Dunfermline area. They did a lot of junior type coaching.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, it was really my granddad.
You coached a lot with a lot of people that went with you. Was there a lot of juniors going to these coaching? Yeah, well, I'll come back to those things, I suppose. Where was that? Were there a lot of people together to get one-on-one coaching from your granddad, or was it part of a group?
No, so we're both really. So my sister and I, my granddad did a lot of coaching here in Kirkcaldy, coached in Dunfermline as well. So my sister and I would he was coaching people from of all age groups, from 10 right the way up to 19, 20, and these kind of small clubs and venues. So my sister and I would go along to these. So you were getting coached, but you're also playing against people who were a bit stronger and a bit older than you were as well. And my granddad also did a lot of individual coaching with myself and my sister as well. So my granddad was a big influence on
Sounds like an influence on you and your sister and the whole community of Fife at the time of badminton, really going all the way up to Kirkcaldy and all that kind of stuff. And was it the same kind of time as Andy Cook was doing a lot of his coaching? Was it around that time?
Mm-hmm. So Andy, and I know Andy Cook, and Andy would be maybe, trying to think, a little bit younger than my granddad. So if my granddad was still alive, he would have been 100 this year. So and I think Andy is a little bit younger. But Andy would probably remember my granddad.
So when he was coaching you, he must have been, 60s?
Oh, my granddad was coaching right the way through. He played badminton. Certainly when he coached my sister and I, he would have been in his 60s, between 60 and 70. He would have coached Jill and I. Unfortunately, he's not with us any longer, but he had a stroke. I'm trying to think, I must have been about maybe 16, 17, somewhere around about there.
That's a hard one, isn't it? When he's coached you and you've been really heavily involved in your life, and that must have been a sore one. Yeah,
it was. It certainly wasn't easy. From a family perspective.
It never is, but I think when somebody, you have sometimes people have family and grandparents who, you go and see once every 3 months kind of idea. But he certainly seems very involved. By contrast.
No,
it's a shame. He's obviously, to his credit, he's obviously done an amazing job with you and the community. So, fair play. That's what else could you want? What else could you want to leave this world with a, kind of a thing like that? So why did you start playing? So you started playing because your mum and dad and granddad were going all the time.
That's basically it. It's
that's great.
It's basically how it kind of happened, and you kind of fall into it to a certain extent.
Was that kind of cliche where you've kind of been forced to sit by the side for hours on end, and then you're waiting? itching to have a shot yourself, and somebody gives you a racket, even when you're a 6 or 7, and you go on that big court and you get a shuttlecock and you get to hit it, and that kind of feeling you get. I mean, you see it. I see it all the time. I remember Peter Hardy in the Borders being like that. Just he'd be by the side. He was too young to play, but whenever there was a break in between games, he'd be on the court with his dad. Hitting shuttles at him and stuff like that. It's a great thing, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
And do you have inclination to coach now yourself? Did it ever give you that inclination?
Well, I do coach, so trying to think. So I finished. I'm trying to think about. It must have been 1997. The World Championships in Scotland was my last tournament.
Was it? Wow.
I didn't really. I played a lot of rugby as a kid as well at Kirkcaldy Rugby Club. I played a bit for North and Midlands under 18. I got asked to trial for Scotland under 18 as well.
What, in rugby?
And yes, and because of badminton, that was my first love.
Yeah.
I didn't really take the rugby any further. But when I stopped playing badminton, I was about 27, 28.
Yeah.
I started to play a bit of rugby again. So I played rugby for about 2 or 3 years afterwards. My son at that point was about maybe 5 or 6, and he started to play a bit of badminton. So I kind of started doing a little bit of coaching with my son, and then that kind of blossomed into getting involved with the national junior program.
Did you?
And now I do. I'm one of the part of the national junior program, one of the regional coaches over in Edinburgh.
Brilliant.
So I mean, it's. I was prior to that. I was doing a bit of coaching with the senior development squad. With Robert Blair headed up that senior development squad, and I would help Robert with the squad and coaching. So. Since Fraser had started to play, so I would say probably for about the last maybe 15, 16 years, I've been pretty heavily involved.
Good. Yeah.
From a coaching
perspective. What do you think you learned? Do you think you have anything you pass on from your granddad even now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some coaching is. There are so many different facets to coaching, and understanding players and individual players that you're working with as well. And what I tend to find is, in terms of not just physical, tactical, emotional, physiology, the mental side of the game as well, and understanding that, and everybody brings different strengths and areas for improvement from a playing perspective. So I kind of find it's quite interesting, but I find that there are facets of coaching and certainly in terms of management and what I do in my work as well. There are things that you can learn and pick up and apply to both activities.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, if you're there are certain things that for example, if you're trying to at my work, so there's maybe about a team of maybe say 10 to 12 accountants that report into me. So that you've got to build a team.
That's right.
You've got to understand these individuals.
And everybody's individual. Everybody has their own strength. Everybody has. There's maybe no individual recipe that says to coach you need to do this or you need to say that. You've got to pick out the strengths of each individual person and say. Daniel McGee, I don't know if you listened to that interview. That was an interesting one. He's done a lot of work on the psychology of coaching and players and how the example he gave was, if I'm particularly good at a certain shot, cross-court slice, if I'm particularly good at that, I won't just go and teach somebody, right, what you need to do is cross-court slice. He'll look at whether somebody's strengths are individually and then make the most of that rather than, it's extreme. And what do you think of the physical side, Gordon? Are you very physical coach? Are you heavy and strict on the fitness side, or what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, it often it can depend on the different development stages that players are at. But the one thing to understand is badminton is a hugely physical sport. Now, it's maybe not hugely physical from a contact point of view, but when you think about what you're doing with the game, the agility that's involved, the amount of time people are spending on court, what you're having to do from a leg strength point of view, core strength, etc. It's a very, very physical game, and I guess when kids are coming through the system, if they've got any notion of being a successful top class player or an elite performer, then in my view, this is just my view, there has to be some sort of realization relatively early on that there's an element of physicality that's required.
So does there become an element of testing, do you think, of where you kind of apply, push somebody, and then say, well, if you don't want it, then you're not going to succeed, are you? Kind of thing. Does that happen? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I have seen it, and the one thing that comes across, in my experience, not just with players and badminton, but also with my work experience, is you can take somebody who isn't maybe the most, from an ability perspective, who doesn't have the most ability out of a group of players or workers, but their attitude. Yeah. If they've got the right attitude, then that's
is, me. See what you described there. That's me. I try very, very hard. I've always tried very, very, very hard, and I get so into it. I'm so passionate about it, but maybe I don't have the finesse of some people. You see players that just got to anything. You either, it just seems to be that you're either a fighter who has to fight for everything, and you just fight your way through it and fight for it, and then you've got the other extreme of you get the people that just feel so natural to them, and they play the game effortlessly. And I've always been the first. I've always been a guy that fights, and then there'll be the one that would, and inevitably the one that with a finesse would win because they came across calmer. They've got better skills, and they don't have to race their heart till it's jumping out of their chest. They can take it in their stride. There's certain players like that, isn't there? There's players that are just so. I mean, I don't know about you, but I watch it on YouTube and on the telly, and sometimes, just not everybody. The Danes are passionate. They really give everything, and you can see they give everything. The Asians are very, very good at whether they do or they don't, looking like they don't care, and it doesn't matter. And that's a huge psychological advantage, I think. That.
I think it's very kind of, to succeed at that level, and it's not just in badminton, in any sport, an elite level like that.
Yes.
There's obviously there are a lot of sacrifices that you have to make, and that physical sacrifice, and understanding what you've got to do is a big part of it. And there's not many people, from a mental point of view, can really, really, truly push themselves to a limit, or sometimes beyond that limit. There aren't many people that in all honesty, that can probably do that.
I still feel the same now. Even when I play now, I give 1,000,000% of every single game that I play, no matter who I'm playing against, and I have no fear of getting beat. I will play against anybody, and if it comes to it, I wonder if I can get 1 point off that guy. It sticks in my head. I'm not one of these guys that says I'm never going to win, so I'm never going to. See, the best tournaments you get where I am in Edinburgh. These tournaments, and I know I'll get thumped. I'm all for it. I'm all for it. If I can go and play in the best standard, don't get me wrong. I wanted to play at Weston, which is the best club. Shout out to Suzanne Swanee. Is the best club in Edinburgh standard wise, and I've said I want to come. And I said, well, you can come, but nobody will pick it. Nobody will pick it and go on. Oh, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. That's
as long as you're enjoying it, Martin, that's the main thing.
I think it's clear. I love it. I don't think someone said like this without knowing that for sure. Okay, let's go back to questions. So you start. Why did you start playing? What was the? Was it a hall? Was it a school? Is it the same place you went to all the time, or what?
Yeah, well, pretty much there's a club. My granddad was heavily involved in a club called St John's in Dunfermline, and that club was huge. So that was a Sunday night, their club night. So the first hour on the Sunday, 6 till 7, was for juniors and junior coaching, and then 7 till 10, the adult seniors would come in and play.
Great club, 4 hours.
So
4 hours, what a great club, right?
Oh yeah, it was great on a Sunday night. Absolutely brilliant. Big social club as well. So that's where a lot of my junior coaching. Well, my granddad, I went along. He was doing. There was a number, not just my granddad.
That first hour would be
juniors, and maybe about 20, 25 juniors would be in a forecourt hall. Awesome. So there was my granddad and a few other people who would be in doing a bit of the coaching there, and then my sister and I there's a Bowiri High School that we were chatting about earlier, has a big games hall, a forecourt games hall at Bowiri High School, and that's where Jill and I did the vast majority of our training.
That's a concrete floor, right?
Yeah, well, it was. It's not now, but it was a concrete floor with a kind of green matting on it. But that's where Jill and I did. I've spent half my life in that badminton hall, probably. So. Yeah, that these are the two places that certainly stick in my mind.
Wow. And so could you get access to, because your granddad was a coach, could you get access to court time whenever you wanted, really?
Yeah, I mean they were pretty good. I think with Jill and I, because we were both kind of junior internationalists from a relatively young age.
What age was that?
So I got my first junior cap at 13. I think Jill was 12. Brilliant. Because we were recognised at a national level, then it made it slightly easier to get court time in the halls. But you were jostling with the usual, five-a-side football, etc., to try and get court time. But they were pretty good with Jill and I.
Yeah, funny. I had an interesting conversation with Richard Vaughan. I don't know if you heard that on Saturday. Who was talking about he went from Wales to Ireland to chief exec for Ireland, and ended up being he did some part-time work for Spanish badminton through an agency, and that agency eventually contacted him when he was in Ireland and said, "There's actually a position come up for the head of squash in Australia." Right? So he emigrated. Right. So he's emigrated to Australia, and that's now his family. That's where he's been there for 6 years. He's not with squash any longer, but we're talking interestingly about courts and the differences between squash and badminton. And he said there's a big problem with squash is that the big thing about badminton is that the whole of multi-purpose. Where squash, you think about squash, you're absolutely knackered. You've got a squash courts and that's it. And it was really interesting. Sorry, I'm digressing, but we were talking about the differences of mentality of squash players and badminton players, and how kind of, I don't know about how you feel, but I think badminton players are quite showy. Right? They're quite. I think they're quite exhibitionists. Exhibitionists. That's a good word. Right? They're exhibitionists. But squash players aren't, because they live in a room with two people in that. You close the door. You can't even see from outside unless you glass back door. So squash players inherently aren't sociable. They're not exhibitionists. And badminton players obviously are. So anyway, I'm going on a massive tangent there. My God.
No, you're fine. And I think it's a good point you make, because badminton is a very, certainly when I was growing up, there was a big social aspect to badminton and clubs. And the interesting thing about badminton as well, Martin, is that the genders can mix. So you go along to a club and it's not just guys, it's not just ladies. There's a mix of genders along at the club as well. So badminton's a kind of a wee bit unique in that respect.
There's not many sports where if you've got 3 guys and 1 girl that you could get a game out of.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, and I think that's where badminton.
Was Julie Hogg there when you were there then?
Oh yeah, so Julie
Stevenson, was it?
Yeah, it was Julie Stevenson and her sister, her twin sister Karen as well. So Karen and Julie also played. So I think they're Julie and Karen might not thank me for this, but I think they're maybe 3 or 4 years older than I am.
I think you're right. I think they're 53, I think Julie said. And did you see the interview with Julie?
No, I listened to the one you did with Robo and Alan McMillan.
You should listen to Julie because obviously it's very topical about Dunfermline, and she talked a lot about the number of clubs and the leagues and the amount, just the sheer number of players. And you like that interview? It's very interesting. And Andy Cook is also very good because he talks about people coming in. That was a question I was going to ask you about people coming in. So when you had the club in Dunfermline, would you find people would come from other places to play, or was it open like that, or would people come from other places to come and, you know?
Yeah. So you got a lot of that. You got a lot of people coming from like kind of Stirling.
Yeah. Just wherever. Because your club was on a Sunday night, and then maybe they'll play somewhere else on a Wednesday or whatever.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, and it was very, and I think St John's became that particular club became a big club, but there was a lot of good players at that club as well. So latterly, I think Julie and Karen played at that club. Russell Hogg, which was Julie's husband, played. Russell was you might have come across Russell's name. Fantastic player, huge amount of caps for Scotland. Russell played there as well. Myself, Jill, my sister. So there was a number of kind of Scottish internationalists that played at that club.
I run a club, and it's funny, isn't it? I run a club in town in Edinburgh, St George's School in the West End near Christopher, and I started it off, and it started off as a summer club really. And what I find interesting about badminton is, first of all, with social media, it's so easy to get a message out to groups of people. And I immediately started by making a group of people and just adding people and adding people and adding people to a messenger group effectively. And then, what interests me about badminton is when somebody knows that somebody else is going to play, is going to go of a good standard, then other people want to go. And it goes on. If you say, such and such is coming, even if it isn't true,
you're giving your secrets away now.
Even if it isn't true, then it certainly brings in people such and such going, I need to come with that, I need to come with that, I need to come with that. And before you know it, you've got a hall full of great players that want to compete, and then I walk on court and they just roll their eyes. No, but quite often I'll just set up games. I've really enjoyed that. Setting up games, you get really good standard of players, and you say, but in advance, you know who's going to come, and I'll say, right, okay, before, we're going to come, it's a social game and all that stuff, but I want to see you and you against each other. And that's really good fun. I love doing that. I love that. And just setting groups together like that. So, yeah.
No, it is good. And I think Julie would, obviously I haven't listened to Julie's interview, but Julie would probably get that message across as well. I mean, at that time when I was growing up, between, say, maybe at the age of 10 and 20, badminton in Dunfermline was enormous. Absolutely enormous. Mixed leagues were on a Saturday night. Very often there'd be a social element after the league games were finished, etc. It was a huge, it was a big deal in Dunfermline. It was good.
Principally, I think that's where it starts. I think that principally, if you breed, if you make it organically grows, and it can still do it. When I started it, and it's like within, I was getting 25 people on a club in the summer. 25 people, because when all the clubs had finished, all the people a lot of badminton was saying, where am I going to go now, kind of thing. And if it was pouring rain or something like that, you couldn't go on your bike and stuff, where can I play? And I would just start sending messages in, who fancies it, and before you knew it, I was getting, let's say, 25 people a week, and, before buying 5 tubes of shuttles a night, hiring a coach for 2 hours, and can I get that home? I need to go somewhere else. And it's amazing. Believe me, it's still there, but it needs an orchestra. It needs somebody, that person who says, right, just get in a messenger. It's so easy. Get a messenger group, invite somebody Joe can play, and then before you know it, send a message, such and such is coming, and then such and such is coming, and before you know it, that group becomes, you turn up and be like, what the happened here? How did this happen? I thought you said you weren't coming. I don't have enough space. It's mad. But the mathematical side is, the more people that turn up, the cheaper it gets.
Aye. Well, it'd be interesting. I noticed you interviewed Alan McIlvaine as well, but it'll be interesting to see or listen to some of the. I was going to say some of the older participants in the interviews, but some of the more senior people that you've interviewed, because I think what might come across. It'll be interesting to see if it's the club element to people's development and their enjoyment of the game as they've improved and gone up through the different standards and their ages. How big an impact that's had on their game? I suspect it'll probably be pretty big.
I think it's massive. It's funny. I put that same question to. I can't remember who was I talking to. Was it Adam Hall? I think it might have been Adam, and I said, so. I said, of course, you've been playing badminton all week, and you go to your training, you do this and stuff, and your mate sends you a text saying, do you fancy going to play badminton tonight? I said, would you do? He says, oh, no chance. Absolutely no chance. And then the Irish, the McGee's, Sam, Josh, and Dan said, when you go back to the Rafo in Donegal, would you do you go and play in the hall, in the old church hall? He says, oh, yeah, the whole family goes there. It's a total social event. Did you watch? You need to look at those interviews. They're good as well. And the McGee family, great crowd.
No, it sounds good. I mean, and that's. I ended up being more of a doubles player than a singles player, and it was the club environment that probably dictated a lot of that. So a lot of our club games were gents doubles and mixed doubles, for example. So and the social aspect of when you're growing up and you're 12, 13, 14, 15, and you're going away, you're playing these games, and you get a match and people have got a big buffet spread on for you. There's cakes, there's sandwiches. You're playing in these club halls, and the back line is a metre up the back wall or something like that. It's a real experience. It was great. It was great times.
It was great indeed. I think I was talking to somebody about schools. I was trying to get to the bottom of that, because schools. It wasn't instrumental in my kind of band playing, but there was a few people. Willie Hislop, I don't know if you know Willie. He was talking about. He played in Kaluk, and
Right.
there was a teacher in his school, and she was there for 6 months. She just Mrs. I don't know what her name was. She came for 6 months from a different school, and she was in a badminton. She started a club, and she was there for 6 months. And there's a whole group of exceptional badminton players, all because that one teacher, 6 months in a school, kind of schools. I can't help but think it's such an obvious thing. School is, you're there. And that's why I love the idea of the school of sport. This whole thing of in between classes, when you've got 3 periods, you just go and get badminton coaching. How awesome is that? You know what I mean? You're at school, and when you're in 5th and 6th year, you get so much. I don't know, my son's, he's 19 now, but when he was at school, he would come home, would walk home, with that rucksack on his bag in between, and you think to yourself, what a waste of time. Imagine somebody said to you, right, okay, see in that period there, I'm going to be here, and I'll be here for coaching you in badminton. Wow, you just be like that, right? Okay, you know what I mean? How good is that? You can have a whole school like that. It's amazing, I think.
Yeah, it's totally. I mean, to be honest with you, the whole school thing. I mean, that's how I started to play rugby. Was it when I played football at primary school, went to high school, Kirkcaldy High School. It was a big rugby playing school, and there was one guy there, a guy called Bob Eason, who was the head of the PE, and Bob was a big rugby guy.
Yeah.
So it was a rugby playing school, and I think Bob went on to coach some of the. He worked for the SRU, did a lot of coaching with some of the elite level juniors, and with the SRU, and also went on to work for Sports Scotland as well.
Really?
But
why has that happened? Why? Because that still happens. No question about that. There is people in school who are into rugby, and they can take a group of kids after school into the rugby field and play rugby. But why can that not happen in badminton? Why does that not happen in badminton? Why doesn't somebody, why isn't there somebody? And obviously, rugby is very, very popular. Football's very, very popular. But why is it a teacher is allowed with health and safety and child protection and all that? Why can somebody take a group of kids into the rugby field, and somebody can't go into a sports hall and take a group of people to play badminton? I just don't get that. That's.
I'm not sure, but I know that probably, I'm trying to think, when I was at school, it was towards the back end of my schooling that the teacher, I can't remember the exact nature of the dispute, but that's when the teachers did stop doing a lot of extracurricular activities, so the coaching, whether it's badminton, whether it's rugby or whatever, that's when all that stopped. And certainly here in Fife was never a big badminton playing area from a school's perspective. There was little pockets here and there, but it wasn't huge. But you certainly notice, and my wife's a teacher, and Lynn has a kind of view on this as well, but you certainly kind of notice that from that period when the teachers started doing a lot of the kind of voluntary extracurricular type stuff, that there was less opportunity for kids to get involved in sport, and badminton obviously was impacted in that as well.
It's such a shame. Let's go back to my questions. I'm only on question 7, and I've only been talking to you for 40 minutes. So get it to you. So
it's a carry out tonight.
Get it to you. Just put me in the scene right now. Do you remember your first racket?
Wow. My first racket was a Sumbata.
What?
Sumbata racket. I've no idea. I don't know what it's called. It was a racket I got from my grandfather. Sunbata. Yes.
Wow.
That was my first racket. Got it from my grandfather. And that's what I played with. I mean, I've no idea what the model of it was or whatever, but that's that's what it was.
I'm googling it, but I can't see anything. Wow. The name of your first club, was that St John's?
Yeah, be St John's, the first club.
Do you remember the first shuttles you used when you got coached at very young age? Were you plastics or were you feathers?
Yeah, it'd be Carlton Plastics.
And your coach was your granddad Jim, is that right?
Yes.
Jim,
yes.
Good,
yeah.
Jim. That's good. Do you remember your first ever tournament and trophy?
First ever tournament was, wow, I think it was the Scottish primary schools up at the Bells in Perth. And it was my first tournament. I think, from memory, my mother's told me the story, but the school, the primary school I was at, wasn't affiliated to Badminton Scotland. So to allow me to play in the tournament, my grandfather, under permission from the school, paid the affiliation fee to Badminton Scotland. Wow. And I got to the final of that tournament.
And you were 13, did you say?
And well, I was at that point. I was 11. Yeah, at that point, the final of the primary schools, the singles, played a guy called David Wallace in the final. David was from Ayr, and I think David went on to play basketball for Scotland.
Really?
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
What a great story. Trophy. But you still have the trophy?
Oof. Now you're asking. It might be somewhere. We've moved house 2 or 3 times since Lynn and I got married. It might be somewhere. I don't know.
Were you always a singles player, singles, doubles, or mixed? Yeah. When did you start playing doubles?
Doubles and mixed. Yeah. Singles. I would never describe myself as a singles player.
Why not?
I think just because. I think because as I was saying earlier, because of the amount of doubles and mixed that we played.
Frankly, there were too many people in the hole. Is that what you would say? Yeah. Whenever you went, it was always more than 2.
Yes. So you were always playing doubles, and it was. I did play singles as a kid. I'm trying to think. Got the final of the Scottish Nationals under 14, under 16 singles, etc. But I would never describe myself as a singles player.
Man. Now you follow me up by saying I would never describe myself as a singles player, but I mean that's a big but.
No, I wouldn't.
Who was your main competition growing up? So was there? I think you were instrumental with your sister. I would say that, Gillian. You know, she. I would say
Yeah.
if I asked her that question, she'd probably say she strived to beat you. Do you think?
Right. Well, she might do. I mean, obviously, at your age group, you have as you're growing
Yes.
up, you have people that you end up playing quite a
Correct.
bit. So for my first couple of years, I would say from about maybe 13 to maybe 15 was a guy called Fraser McDonald from Perth, and Fraser and I had some ding dongs playing
Good.
singles. And Fraser would probably come out on top most of these battles as well,
It's
I
good.
would say. And then there are other guys that I remember have really fond memories. So names Alan Paisley from Lanark was Stephen Collins from Lanark as well. Uh, Robo Craig Robertson was probably a year or two younger than me. David Gilmer as well. Dave and I played a lot of doubles together when we were from about maybe 17 right the way through as seniors as well. So there's a lot of guys that I have fond memories of, and yeah,
Good times.
it's so there's not really one player. I would say there's probably a number of
No,
kind
that's good.
of
That's it. I mean,
maybe three or four
as
different
long as you've got
players.
somebody driving, I'm always interested in that question. Is that normally there's somebody who'd say, "God, I can't stand that guy. I will never get drawn against that guy." It's a fucking nightmare, and it makes you better, you know. And you talk. Jim Mailer told the story about him going to the Bell Sports Centre in Perth, and he got thumped in the first round by a guy 15-2 at singles. He just felt so embarrassed, like mortified when it happened. He was mortified, and he came away and he said, "That's never gonna happen to me again."
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
know, he fought, and then the next time he went, he thumped the guy. And
aye,
he's how good is that, right? And I'm quite interested in that subject. That I asked Richard Vaughan that question because he's obviously been an international player, and on Saturday, I asked him a question about losing, you know, because we're
yeah,
talking about, especially at the moment, how, you know, you travel all around the world and, you know, the McGee's and stuff like that, and various other people, various players, Jordan Hart travelled to All England, you know, various people travelling all over the world, you know, so you leave your home, you pack yourself up, you book yourself a flight, you book yourself a hotel, you go through all the quarantine, you've been, you know, isolated for 5 days, right? And then you're stuck in your you fly there, and you get off the plane, you get a bus to the hotel, you take into a room for 40 hours, you cannot leave it while you're eating this bags food out of a, you know, takeaway sandwiches and stuff in a hotel room, four walls. They're going start crazy, right? And then they walk on court day one and they get some.
I know it's
And you think, so, I mean, it's like a week of, you know, aside from all the training you do as a matter of course, you've got all that, you know, just the idea of arriving somewhere, it must be, I don't know, it's just, God, it must kill you, you know?
aye. I mean it's I don't know. I mean, certainly from my perspective in terms of growing up, there's probably I mean, I think I said to earlier, Fife wasn't really a kind of massive badminton
No.
area. Um, and
You were
and
unusual, yeah.
well, not necessarily. And this, I guess this is kind of where I'm getting to with this is a bit is. I mean, Russell Hogg was also from Fife, from
Yeah.
Dunfermline. Russell was maybe 2 or 3 years older than I was, and from my point of view, that was somebody to look up to, and somebody that you don't get a lot of people from Fife who are managing to compete and compete extremely successfully on the national stage, and also the international stage as well. So it was somebody who you could look up to
Yes. It's
and
interesting.
help kind of
Very
It's
interesting.
I mean that probably for me I would say is was probably a kind of big help for me, and Russell helped me at different points in my career as well. So my badminton career. So it was that's the one thing I do remember is saying, oh, Russell was able to do this or able to do that, and that's what
Really.
kind of
So did he give you
that was
did he
part of
give you belief that you could, you know, when you're leaving school and that kind of thing, and then you think to yourself, did he give you belief that there was a career to be had in this outside of being a player, but outside of, when you finish school, everybody's the same, aren't they? You say, right, what am I going to do now? You got the career guidance teacher, and they say, okay, what are you going to do? And oh, I'm going to be whatever. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you say, I'm going to be a badminton player, and they laugh at you or whatever. So he was that guy. Interesting. I had a conversation with Dan McGee or Sam McGee actually, and Josh McGee. That Chloe McGee was the first. She left Raffle to go and train, and I think it was in Sweden. So she was in Sweden, and then because she had done that, she was being coached, and she in Sweden, and she was living in Sweden, and she was making a wage from it. And because she'd done that, Sam thought, that's what I want to do. So he then contacted, can I come and stay here? Yeah, no bother. So the two of them went, and then Josh did the same thing. But the point I'm making is that somebody has allowed them to believe that there is something other than just a hobby in this. And I guess that you've had that. Maybe Russell gave you that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Russell was somebody. Russell was a very very professional in his approach as well, and I think it was the example to a certain degree. He was very successful, and it was a good example to follow, and I think that kind of helped. Yeah. It certainly helped me.
What do you mean when you say professional? What do you mean by that?
Well, Russell was very kind of, when I say professional, what I mean is he was very thorough. Brilliant. He was he was very detailed. He was very professional in his approach to the game. Before these players became professional, to a certain extent, because the sport here, I think it must have been 1997 when the Scottish Institute of Sport was first became an organisation, and at that point, badminton players were funded here in Scotland from that point forward, so there was a time before 1997 where players were not necessarily full time,
just like what Jim
earning a living.
Just exactly what Jim Mailer said, where he was, you had to get a job, and he loved badminton so much, but he had to get a job that allowed him flexibility to go to tournaments, to do this or to do that, to pay his way, but flexibility to finish early because he had coaching, or start late because he had coaching, or that kind of thing. But he had to work, right? It's not like as you say now, these guys that, I don't know, some of them do work hard. They've got I really feel for these young professionals and think, how can they possibly compete on the same stage as these people who, they live it? I'm talking. Yeah. Sorry, you said.
No, sorry. I was just going to say. I remember. I'm trying to remember what year it was now, but Steve Badley was the top English singles player for a long time, and a very highly ranked player in the world semi-finals of the All England, etc. And Steve came up in, I can't remember, it was maybe the early 90s, and was the kind of head coach up here for a while. And I always remember Steve telling me, it might have been the Europeans at the Kelvin Hall or something like that, that he felt that the Scottish badminton team was the brainiest badminton team out of all the European teams, because what you tended to find is a lot of players went on to university because they couldn't make a living out of badminton, but going to university, obviously you further your education, but it also allows you to play for another 3 or 4 years, allows you to play a lot of badminton as well.
So Loughborough, that's very good at that, Loughborough University.
Yeah, and you'll find a lot of players. I mean, certainly, when I was playing senior badminton for Scotland, there was a lot of people went on to, there was dentists, there was lawyers, there was accountants, there was engineers, all these sorts of people in the team. It was that wasn't unusual.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah, it's a good point. Your main competition going up right. Well, finally we're 54 minutes in, and we just got the current stage. So, do you play in a club now? Present time accepted. Do you play now?
Yeah, there's a club in a place called Kinghorn that's where my wife does her own water throwing.
I've been to that club.
Oh, have you?
When I lived in Aberdeen, I went there. I played with. What do you call the guy that sells the cars? Ovals.
Oh, Drew.
That's right. Drew. And
Yeah.
John Young.
Yeah, John Young and Ewan McDonnell.
Yeah, I know all of these guys. Yeah. Look,
Yeah.
everybody in that club's got an exceptional backhand. Why is that?
I don't know.
Have you noticed that? Yeah.
I don't. Well, I don't know. I mean,
It's something about the
it's a
height of
great,
the hall.
it's a great laugh.
I think they just spend their time doing their backhand the whole time. And there's one particular guy that's quite old, right? He's old. I know Drew. I remember Drew being a caster. I can't remember who it was. Yeah, it's a good club though. Surprisingly good club. When I went, I thought, wow, in the community hall.
Yeah, it's good. There are some good players that pop along to it. So it's and I think the reason that there's probably a lot of people are a little bit older at the club.
Yes, that's right.
So the reason everybody's got a decent backhand is because nobody's quick enough to take it round the head.
Yeah, you're probably right. Oh, do you know a guy called Andrew Frayne? We said that name. He started from last year. Andrew Frayne. He lives in Aberdour. He plays at the club in.
Oh, I think I do. Is he?
Quite short.
Doesn't have a lot of hair.
That's correct. You and me.
University lecturer.
That's exactly what he does. Andrew Frayne.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I know Andy.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He plays at. That's good. He plays at Nomads in North Morningside on Tuesday night because he works in town. So when he's I don't know when he moved to Aberdour. No, he's always been in Aberdour. He started working. Yeah, he comes in on a Tuesday night, but sometimes that's dedication, right? Work in the middle of Edinburgh University, getting a train home, getting changed, and then coming back to North Morningside to Costofen to play at a club at 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock, and then get the next train home again. He's but King. Sorry. Tuesday night is North Morningside in Edinburgh. If you're ever in town, you should come. That's Tuesday night, 8 till 10, and then 6 till 10 on a Thursday. Is Nomads, which is at the same hall. St George's. It's ideal, by the way, for the West. If you ever find yourself that way, it's ideal for because it's what Costofen is. It's the west side of Edinburgh. Perfect for the bypass. Perfect for coming over the bridge. It's not bad at all. Of a night. And there's a long night. It's like 6 till 10 o'clock. John Young comes. You know John Young. He plays all the time. Yeah. He loves a game. Oh my God, he loves a game of John.
Yes, he's a big Liverpool supporter as well.
Is he?
Yeah.
If I phoned him now and said you want to give him a badminton, people would reckon he'd be here by about there's nothing wrong with that. And he starts really late, He started really late.
Aye. There's the one thing that I love about club badminton is it's really sociable, but you get people with lots of different backgrounds. So some have started early, some have started late, some have started again. It's great. You just all pitch up, hit your badminton shuttles, and nobody cares really about who's winning, who's losing, etc. It's great fun.
Kinghorn is very structured though. You get in and they say, "Right, you're on that," and there's not 1 second between the games, is it? Right, you on that, you on that, you on that. There's no. All right, how's it getting on? No, on. Go play. Go.
It sounds a bit tiring.
It definitely was when I was there. So okay, current racket, nearly finished.
Current racket is the Yonex. I'm trying to think, is it an Aero something 9,900?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, Aero 9,000. That's right. Yeah. Do you know what tension you play? Does that play in Kentucky? Do you string and fade?
It's Bruce Flocker actually does the stringing. Aye, he does. Bruce doesn't stay that far from me, so. I can not that he's had to string many rackets recently.
I know, of course, I know. He's
but no, Bruce does the stringing, so I usually get mine done about 27, 28 pounds.
That's any type of string?
Nope, not fussy. Usually, Yonex titanium was usually what would stick in it.
Yeah, your kids have oh, you said you've got son Ross, is it?
Well, no, I've got my son Fraser. And I've got my son Fraser he's at University in Edinburgh, and my daughter Katie is at University in Glasgow.
But they play badminton.
Well, my son did play badminton up until about he was 18, so that's maybe about 4 years ago. Fraser stopped, so he tore his hamstring playing football of all things. And so Fraser was a fair player, played to a decent national level, but he the hamstring paid to a lot of that.
Did you say he's in Aberdeen?
He's well. It's a bit complicated. He's at University of Edinburgh, but he stays in Glasgow.
Right.
So his girlfriend's at Glasgow University, so they stay through in Glasgow. And my daughter is bear watch what I'm saying here. But she is very musical. So my wife's side of the family are very musical. So Katie did a lot of ballet, a lot of dance, a lot of singing, piano playing, all that kind of stuff.
More creative than quite right.
Yes, certainly more creative than me.
I was going to say no, me. And do you still like your men's doubles the best?
Yeah. Men's doubles. I don't have the movement now for mixed doubles. If I play mixed doubles, it turns into a gents doubles.
Really? Levels. It's really. And what are you like? Sorry, nearly finished. Are you nearly? What are you like? Do you feel very competitive now? Do you get angry when you lose, or what do you like? Or does it bother you? Does it roll off you? Or do you think, like me, I go raging?
I think. I mean, you never lose that competitive.
Some do. Some do, by the way. Some do, Gordon. There's a lot of people who have said, I'm not really bothered what we lose now.
Well, I certainly haven't lost it. I mean, the one thing I would say is that, because when you lose, it becomes a little bit more, it's a bit easier to accept a loss now than it would have been maybe 20, 25 years ago. Yeah. Because it's much more of a social game. And I think when you get to my age at 50, some of your physical attributes disappear. So, things like I don't have any flexibility in my back now, for example. So there are certain things you can't do. And I know when you play veterans badminton now, it's very difficult to get the shuttle on the floor because everybody's lost that little bit of power. Because your physicality isn't quite there anymore.
Have you done any of those?
I played. It was when I was turned 40. Craig Robertson and I played we went through to Largs and played the Scottish Open kind of vets thing through there, and we ended up winning it as well. And that's the first tournament I played for a long time. But since I think I played it the following year, but since then I kind of stopped. I got problems with my shoulder. And I got plantar fasciitis.
I've got that now.
How do you manage that?
Brutal.
It's brutal.
It's a really weird. There's a really weird thing. I mean, I don't think it ever goes. Does it? I don't think it ever goes away. I think you still have it.
Well, I'm not too bad now. I mean, I still have to probably. I do about 10 to 15 minutes of stretching, maybe 4 or 5 mornings a week, just to make sure it doesn't come back. Because I
found a secret to get rid of it.
What was that?
And it was a really, really, really weird one. If you get your 2 knuckles like that, right? You're not going to believe this. But you run that down your shin.
Aye.
Down from your knee, right down your shin. Like you press down as hard as it can possibly be. And those ligaments are connected to your heel. You wouldn't believe it. But you try that. I swear to God, try that. Put loads of pressure on the tendon left and right of the bone. Right the way down as hard as you can. So it hurts. And you suddenly go, oh my God! I saw it online, and it really, really works. If you that, and it just I don't know what it does. I don't know what it is. But apparently, that tendon at the front around your shin bone is connected to your heel. Really, really weird, but it works. Really works. I still get even talking to you now. I go walking. If I play golf, I start limping a little bit. It's a horrible thing, isn't it? Horrible. Really?
Well, it was. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've not really had it for about maybe 4 or 5 years now. But when I had it, it took me about maybe 5 or 6 months to really try and shift it. It was really horrible. Really
I don't know if not playing badminton has not helped it, but it went away. I think it started with bad shoes. I think that's how it first started. I was playing badminton regularly 3 times a week for a long time at a time, and slamming our foot down to concrete floor at St George's School. And I think that was bad. Sorry, I'd like one last question because it's an hour and 4 minutes.
No problem.
The last question is, what is it that you love about badminton? I ask everybody this question compared to rugby and other sports. What do you think is different?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think that there's a big social element to it. You know, we talked about it a little bit earlier. There's a big social element to badminton. I think that, and because you get both genders playing as well, you know, it's not just a purely a guy's thing or purely a ladies' or a women's thing. You get both genders playing, and that's what kind of attracts me to it now. And I think, you know, when you're growing up, and you want to play a sport that stays with you for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It's a really good. It is a good sport. You make a lot. I've made a lot of good friends through badminton of both genders, and people that I've kept in touch with for a long period of time as well. So for me, I think you know that's probably been one of the things that when I reflect back that I've really enjoyed. And I think also the it kind of suits my kind of personality a little bit, from the point of view that I get bored quite quickly. So badminton's a very quick sport. It's a very fast sport. You know, it's not a sport where, you know, I've played football and rugby where, you know, you could be in a position and you might never see the ball for you know, long periods of time. It's difficult to keep your concentration, etc. Whereas badminton, there's things going on all the time. You can be relatively creative on the court as well. So, that probably sums up my view.
I would agree with all of that. I think it's a for me, there's nothing else I could think of that's anything like it. And as we say, you meet loads of people. And one thing I would say, as I was talking to Richard about this, is you get a chance during this time you've got one thing about this moment, I think, is you have time to reflect on your life, and, you know, reflect on it without getting too deep about, you know, to think about things and people that you've met and what you do. And we can't play badminton, but at the very least you can think about, God, remember him. And that's why I started this, really, is so that people could say, God, you remember him? And, you know, you'll share it, and you talk, and we'll bring out some memories, somebody else say, God, I remember him, and Julie will watch it, and this is what happens. And it just, you know, hopefully it'll bring everybody a bit of happiness and a bit of, you know, I think you'll probably find you'll get a few messages from people saying, God, I remember that. Or I had a message from, were you at the same time as Alan and Valerie, was it? Alan
Alan McMillan was probably about maybe 4 years or so older than me as well. And Alan McIlvaine was a little bit. In fact, Alan McIlvaine coached me a little bit towards the back end of my badminton career as well. But
on YouTube yesterday, he had a message from a guy called Ian Farrow, who's an English guy who came up, and having watched on YouTube, said, I was searching for things about it and I found this. And he made a comment to Alan, and he reaches out, and it's incredible.
Really?
It's absolutely incredible what happens. You'll see people, if you just, when you get it, I don't even know if you're on Facebook, but if you get it, if you can share the YouTube link to a few friends, and anybody you can talk to, and I'll do the same. I always rewatch these videos and try and find out names. That's why I take notes of people's names, and hopefully we can reconnect the community together and get people that used to play, that used to love it, to get back to it, and we can build the community back up again, right? That's the idea. So,
cool.
That's brilliant. I'll let you get on with your evening. Thank you for your night. You've had an hour, and I've had you stuck to this seat for an hour and 10. You can go and get your tea now and go to.
Oh, thanks very much, Martin. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I've met a new friend. I've got another new badminton friend, so I like it a lot. Take care. Happy night.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gordon.
Same to you. Cheers.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Richard.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, Martin.
Cheers. That's it.